Okay.
It's another year. California's a mess.
Okay, we ready? Everybody ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September the 1st. It's currently 7 o'clock. We have a note, the Village Hall Council Chambers is now open in limited capacity to the public due to COVID-19. Physical distancing measures have been put in place to allow members of the public to attend in person. A maximum capacity of 20 people is here, including staff and council. Alternately, members of the public may view our regular council meeting by accessing the meeting via our new YouTube channel. Questions, comments regarding the agenda may be submitted to up to 4 p.m. on meeting days by email to juliehalliwell@anmore.com or delivery to the Village Hall to be read during the meeting. This meeting's proceedings will be broadcast live via YouTube and available as a recorded archive on the Village website. So with that being said, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. The recommendation would read.
That the agenda be approved as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any items shown on this meeting agenda. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Nope. Okay, we'll move on to delegations. We have a representative, Stephanie Gabriel from Strata BC 3635, Countryside Village, regarding a request to adjust water bills due to a leakage. Miss Gabriel, you're welcome. Welcome and thank you for coming.
To introduce myself, I've never appeared at a council meeting before, so I think I'm meeting most of you for the first time.
Okay.
Our president, Dave Schmidt, had also hoped to be here, but he's laid up with some health issues this week. I was hoping he could accompany me because he's been sort of the point man for the repairs when the rupture happened. So if you guys have any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability with the acknowledgement that I'm not necessarily the most knowledgeable person, but I'm the one who could be here tonight. I sent in some materials last week, which I hope you've all had a chance to review, notably the letter, which kind of gives a timeline of what happened and the circumstances. We first saw the bill kind of end of April. Actually, sorry, I think the bill was dated end of April, but we first saw it from our property management company early June, I believe, on the 4th. And from there was a pretty quick timeline to identifying the rupture, which was actually underground, so had not even been visible up until that point. And the repair was done very, very quickly thereafter. So we kind of started exploring options with Metro Vancouver about bill forgiveness because we heard this rumor that there were some avenues available for getting some forgiveness for bills that were the cause of a rupture that was not identified and that was repaired quickly upon identification. And they kind of sent us back to the village because they don't offer relief to end users, but rather to the municipalities who purchase water from them. So here we are at their direction. We have a very large bill. You guys have seen the details I take it in the materials that I submitted. So I am aware that it's a very large sum of money, the overage here. And I imagine that you all can appreciate that also for our very small strata council that's trying to do these infrastructure upgrades on a reasonable timeline that's in keeping with the plan that we had in place when Countryside Village was first stratified is also a challenge with the limited funds that we have too. So, I'm not necessarily expecting an answer to such a big ask today, but I'm kind of hoping that I could answer any questions that council members might have and just kind of establish a conversation about this with the hope that we might be able to move forward and find a solution that is acceptable for everybody involved.
Good. Thank you very much. Does council have any comments? Any comments at all, or?
Sorry, you have one.
Yeah, Councillor Weber.
How many houses are in the strata?
There are 92 units.
92 units. So what would this cost per unit, this overage?
Well, $22,000, I guess we could.
But wasn't your bill regularly?
Our normal bill was about $5,000. So
Okay.
we have the overage that we see on the current bill is actually not going to represent the total overage because we didn't become aware of the leak until after partway into the next billing cycle.
So
there would be an additional amount on the next bill. But $15,000, you could do the math dividing it by 5 units. Our concern wasn't so much, can people afford a special levy or will people pay, but the fact that, with a very limited budget, we're trying to use those funds to do the infrastructure upgrades that were part of the original plan when Countryside Village first came into existence as a strata. So this is, as far as our annual budget goes, this is a pretty hefty sum of money to lose to something that's not ultimately going to result in any improvement. It's just, we sometimes refer to it as the whack-a-mole problem, which we're very much trying to get beyond. Nobody who's on council right now thinks that it's an ideal situation to be, addressing these little issues as they arise. We would like to do, a more comprehensive infrastructure, but obviously that involves, the time it takes to collect funds, and any, special levies have to be approved by the membership too. So
Right.
we can't, even if we think it's a good idea, even if we think it's necessary, we're not running the show. We're just making the recommendations, and then there's 5 members on council, and then the other 87 owners have to sign off on it.
imagine it.
And there has historically been some resistance to giant special levies. So
We're aware.
yeah.
Yeah, it's, okay, that answers my question.
Councillor Nader.
I take it that this leak was caused
Sorry,
by
if I could just interrupt, just a
Sorry.
reminder for mics to go on when
yeah,
individual council members are speaking, please, so that the people who are watching on the live stream can hear us clearly. Thank you.
Good.
Do I have to turn mine off so other people can speak?
No.
Okay.
So, the leak was caused by the infrastructure pipes underneath the trailer court?
It actually was caused by the pipe was kind of at the boundary of one of the strata lots and the common property, which is the road of Highland Crescent. So that's the oldest part of the park, which is if you kind of turn left behind the store up top. So that was the one that was developed in the 70s, from my understanding.
So when they repaired this, did they repair all of it or just part of it?
That's a difficult question to answer. What do you mean by all of it?
Well, you said it was an old area. Is the old area still
Yes.
got the old pipes?
Yes, so there's a little bit of historical backstory here, and again, I've been living at the complex since the stratification happened, but I know there's a lot of backstory before that as well, so some of that is, I've been brought up to speed by other people who know the history a bit better than me. But my understanding is that when the underground piping was originally laid, when it was a trailer park and there was no, foresight that it was going to become a strata one day, the water pipes were kind of put willy-nilly all over the place. So they run under trailers, they run under pads, and some of those trailers are still there, and some of them have been replaced by houses. So anytime a house is built, when they do the excavation, we're rerouting the water line so that they're coming to the main road. But there was no main water line that was going along Highland Crescent when it was first installed. So there's kind of a spider web of pipes underneath. And every time someone builds a house, we're requiring them to bring them to the road line, with the goal of eventually having a water line that runs along the road as it should along Highland Crescent. But as a project, that would be, a pretty significant infrastructure investment. My understanding is that we have a quote that's something in the ballpark of $150,000 to do that one section of the park. And there was another area of the park that was deemed a little bit higher priority, which we did, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, which was like a $1 million-ish undertaking. So some funds that would be going towards this one, of course, there's as Councillor Shirley knows, there's kind of issues arising all over the park, and we kind of prioritize them and deal with them as they arise. So this is one that we've had our sights on even before this water leak arose a
So
couple of months ago.
I guess my question is, what happens if there's more water leaks?
Yeah, so our goal is to avoid that. So what we would like to do is bring a main line along Highland Crescent. But there's this additional challenge, which is that anytime you cap an old line, because there's this kind of spider web, what actually happened here was the line that ruptured actually wasn't even in use anymore, because there was a house on the property, so they had brought their water to the property line, as we require people to do. But because there's this mix of old and new pipes, it's a little bit of a challenge. So doing it all at once would definitely reduce our chances of having this happen again in the future.
Briefly, thanks, Mayor McEwen. I just did the math. It turns out at 92 units at 15,000 is what you had stated. It's like $160 per unit that I came up with, which seems reasonable. I mean, I know that's a large amount. And it's also my understanding, after speaking with fellow councilors and just learning a little bit more about the process, and we've had this come up in the past, that it's not something that we typically cover. We've never done it in the past, and by reducing the water bill, I fear we would be setting precedents in case this comes up again. So I can't speak for the rest of council, but it's a bit of a concern from how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. No, I can understand that.
Councillor Troper.
Yeah, just to follow up on Councillor Cryer, in the last 6 years that I've experienced these occurrences, there have been some, but on private property, all the private landowners have paid it. And I know that from firsthand experience because I was away on vacation and my sprinkler broke and it cost me $4,000. So that's what we've been doing without fail for bills, 10 times this amount on a per owner basis. So I think it's owner responsibility.
I just had some sort of comments just to make. This is not normal procedure. Normally we keep these in camera to protect the identity of the property owners, so these do happen on occasion, and so it may not be as public knowledge as that, but we have not given any, these are private property owners, and it's their responsibility, and I can tell you that some of those bills have been upwards of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that these property owners have been there to face. And part of the problem is that in Anmore, I know you included a couple examples of different municipalities. I can tell you White Rock has its own water system, so they aren't buying water. Saanich, similar situation. Surrey and Delta were your other two examples, and they're buying water at a wholesale rate. We have to pay a premium rate just to get it up here from Port Moody. So any relaxation would be at the bearing of everybody, all the other taxpayers in the municipality. So we have not done it in the past, so it sort of seems like there doesn't seem to be a lot of appetite for this. I know that 5 years ago I met with the previous strata president and with our building inspector, Martin Gregg, and who actually has a piece of water pipe there that we actually do, and we informed the strata at that point in time, the president, that we had a real concern that even any new houses being built in that area with the infrastructure that was there, and we actually tried to put a bit of a stop on it, but our hand was forced somewhat, and so we allowed it, but we made a very big concern at that point in time as to the infrastructure issues. And I know talking with Mr. Littlewood, who was previous on it,
Yeah.
they've done some great work in regards, especially regarding the sewer and the septic treatment
Sure.
and that. So I wasn't that aware of the water situation, but I do think that it's something that when this village realized that we had a water issue, we had to focus all our resources into it in regards to making sure that we had drinkable water. It was about 7, 8 years ago when we had the boil water thing, and we put all our resources to it. So
Sure.
my suggestion is to the strata is put all your resources to it and make sure that because like I said, if this happens again, where does it end? So I really appreciate you coming tonight, but please recognize that this isn't sort of normal protocol for this, that public meeting and stuff like that. And so but you're not alone, or the strata is not alone. There are several homeowners that have these similar issues, and we just aren't in a position to be able to forego those costs.
Of course. And as I said in my note, it's hard for us to determine as the end user of the water, whether there are other opportunities to discuss the matter with Port Moody. Our understanding from Metro Vancouver was that the municipalities that purchase the water can request an upstream refund of costs because, from Metro Vancouver's perspective, I think they probably price the water in a way that overall is meant to cover their cost of distribution, but it's not like Metro Vancouver is paying per volume unit for the water. They just need to cover their cost of distribution in a way that's financially sustainable. So part of what we were hoping was that we might be able to explore whether or not there are any options for doing that kind of upstream, aware of the possibility that it may not work out. I know that what we're asking is it would be a very large sum for a small village to bear, just like it's a very large sum for us to bear.
I can tell you about 3 years ago, we actually were able to renegotiate a little bit and get a bit of a savings in regards to what Port Moody charges. Initially, when the water line was there, it's at the sort of, I guess, the east end of the village. They were charging us for the electricity to pump it up. Chlorination, we have our own chlorination, but we were able to get a bit of relaxation because now they built up all up to Heritage Mountain, but it was very minuscule. So I think that discussion would probably go on. It wouldn't be all that fruitful for them at this point, to be honest. But I think the main focus should be from the strata is to really do everything you can in regards to upgrading the system. And like Martin, our building inspector, it shows you pipe, like that was a piece of pipe that was taken out, and it's actually not even water pipe.
Essentially, it's a
Yeah, that's being
I think there's probably all kinds of things underground up there that would surprise many of us, but I appreciate that historically there's been kind of some tension about whether the way that strata was formed and the way that the infrastructure plan was made, whether that was the best way to go forward. And I suppose hindsight is always 20/20, and probably people's opinions will continue to change over time. But I also know that when the plan was made, it was something that was agreed upon between village council and between the strata that was to be formed then. So, it's not as though the people that are sitting on strata right now just came up with this idea to ignore the issues that need upgrading.
To be correct, I was on council at that point in time, and to be correct, it was to be able to offer home ownership rather than the rental, the trailer park.
Sure.
What happened is that there became, because of the building code, the allowable square footage of a basement all of a sudden didn't become calculated, and houses became significant in size with many a washer, and the infrastructure couldn't handle it. And that's really where the problem lied in regards to what was being built in there. And so, I recognize, I think it's a great community. I think it's going to be amazing. I think that some infrastructure needs, and this is no similar than what the village faced
Of course.
as a whole.
The idea of aging infrastructure is not unique to countryside.
Piecemeal put together.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we did is we actually got a water modeling. We had a date and a night, paid the money. We got a water modeling thing because I never wanted to have when I was on council again where we had to do a water advisory. And so I really can't stress enough as to maybe an engineer needs to get involved, identify everything, because if you can't, as a strata, if you can't supply water and the essential services, it's just not going to move forward.
Of course. And we are aware of that. And once again, just to reiterate, this is an issue that we were already starting to make plans about even before this unfortunate leak occurred. And just, with the scale of the community, I know, Councillor Cryer, you said you'd done the math, and, 160 may sound small to certain residents of Anmore and not small to other residents. And, as far as median income, I have a strong hunch that Countryside Village probably is a little bit lower than the rest of the village of Anmore. So, there's that one, and then there's the one for the next water bill, which we know is going to be probably similarly inflated compared to this one. And then we have to go back and tell people, by the way, now we need, a very much larger special levy to do the infrastructure placement. So.
And I will be honest, there's some people that have large lands that have been left to them, and are getting mad overages because of the infrastructure. And
Sure.
Getting faced with $5,000 and $6,000 bills, and as terrible as that is, it's not your neighbor's responsibility. It's when it's on your property. So.
No, of course.
Well, I think the neighborhood is an amazing neighborhood. I think it's going to be amazing as well, especially now that we put some constraints on it. But at this point, and like I said, keep us updated, and if you find out anything more. But that's kind of where we're at right now. So.
I'm wondering if there's a way that we could request maybe that someone would be willing to maintain an open line of communication with someone on our council if we do find ourselves able to explore other options for kind of going upstream to Port Moody or Metro Vancouver, someone that we could communicate with at the village level regarding the matter going forward.
Certainly talk to our
Okay.
CEO, but Port Moody is not sometimes our greatest neighbor when it comes. So.
Okay.
Anyway,
Thank you for your time.
Very much. Thank you for being in the audience. Okay, adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 21st, 2020. The resolution, or the special council meeting on the recommendation would read.
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 21st, 2020, and the minutes of the special council meeting held on July 24th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Someone moved it, second, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from those minutes? No. Move on to the consent agenda. Any council member wishes to remove an item for further discussion? No? Then can I get someone to move that the consent agenda be adopted? Move, seconded, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. We're now on to legislative reports, the municipal approving officer for the village of Anmore. Before we go to the recommendation, I've had some conversations with members of council, and I'm actually going to propose that this get moved to an in-camera council meeting right after this meeting due to the fact of labor and land.
In order to be able to do that, we would need to provide notice. I don't believe that we currently have a notice out available to hold an in-camera meeting under that section of the community charter. But we can certainly look to schedule one at a future date.
Sure, okay. So then we'll just defer 9A at this point.
Sure. Would you like to make that recommendation?
That 9A get deferred to an in-camera meeting at a later date when proper notice is given. Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Move on to 11A, purchase of a gently used dump truck. Report dated August 19th, 2020 from our chief administrative officer is attached. Sorry. We'll move on to 11A, purchase of a used dump truck. Report dated August 19th, 2020 from our Chief Administrative Officer is attached.
Thank you. So with me tonight, I have our Operations Superintendent, Lance Fortier, as well, who will undoubtedly help me answer any technical questions that may arise. But essentially, we were asked to have a look at this as staff as we spend, quite a bit of time and money contracting out the services for a dump truck. And it's used for the purposes of hauling debris away when we're doing our ditching program. It's used to bring materials into the village, such as salt and other materials that are required to undertake general public works duties. And so it's felt at this time that it might be beneficial and certainly would be cost effective to look at purchasing a used dump truck. So in terms of the village's fleet, we have two Ford F-550s, so larger trucks with dump boxes on them that are sort of used for those purposes right now, including salting and plowing in the winter. So the feeling is that if we were to purchase a used dump truck at this point in time that would be used for the next, say, 3 to 5 years, so it would have that kind of life, then that would align with the replacement of one of those Ford F-550s in about that same time frame, and give staff the opportunity to sort of see what is needed in terms of functionality from the dump truck while not outlaying the higher cost of purchasing a brand new one. The one that we would look to purchase as a used also wouldn't have the snow plowing capabilities that a replacement brand new vehicle would in future years as well. But it would definitely give staff the ability to learn sort of the air brakes and have that additional experience behind the wheel before we start getting into that snow clearing requirement a few years down the road. So Mr. Fortier has been doing quite a bit of work communicating with local suppliers to see whether or not there's anything on the market in terms of used dump trucks. And there have been some, but they get snapped up pretty quickly. So what we're looking for tonight is a request from council to go ahead and approve a budget of up to $80,000 to purchase a used dump truck, and that we would then, look to procure one when it did come available. So I'm certainly open to any questions that council may have, and I've got a recommendation as well. If you'd like me to read
let's
that
read
first.
get the recommendation on, and then we'll have some comments.
So the recommendation is that council approve a budget of up to $80,000 for the purchase of a pre-owned single-axle dump truck.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Now I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments, and we have Lance here. Councillor Trowbridge.
How used is this dump truck?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Fortier because he's got a little bit more insight into that.
So, in doing some research, I'm finding that the used dump trucks are, like we're talking older, are probably going to be something like a money pit. So, we're looking probably within 5 years old.
Okay.
Do you have a spec for mileage or what its duty cycle has been?
Yeah, so
because
probably we're going to be kicking around the 100,000 kilometer mark, and then around the 1,500 hour mark. So kind of based within that range.
What's the duty cycle of the typical engine in a dump truck?
Well, once you start getting upwards of 150,000, you start running into some problems. So we're kicking, between 150,000 and 200,000. We're gonna start putting some more money into it every year.
Which for us is okay, but what about the hours, Lance?
For the hours, Yeah, so it really depends. So, I mean, it's a wide range, so, and there's not a lot out there in the used market, so that's kind of the hard part to answer, actually.
And maybe if I could just jump in, I think probably, this was a thought that I had, is that it all really depends on how sort of tough you are on the vehicles, right? Like, we're typically pretty hard on our vehicles because we've got a very small fleet. They've got to serve multi-purposes. They're used all year round. This particular truck, I think one of the hardest things on our vehicles is the snow clearing. And this particular truck wouldn't be used for that for the outset, so we'd have a little bit of extra longevity in terms of the impact of not providing that service.
Good. I've got a couple questions first, and then I'll get to you. You know, I had the pleasure about 4 times this summer of driving by our ditch cleaning operator with his feet up on the counter saying, you know, if we had a truck, I wouldn't be just standing here getting paid by the hour. So, you know, it's something that is important. I know that also with Lance has been doing an incredible job on the trail rebuilding and getting product brought in, which we can't on the F550. So the amount of time savings, you know, I just recently, you know, had to sign a couple checks for product getting in by third-party dump trucks that we would be doing all ourselves. Same with the sand and salt and that. I think that I think we've evolved to that point of a thing. I know that, you know, as a fire trustee, we were able to get a really great ladder truck for, what was it, 15?
30 grand or something, I think.
All in was about 40, all repainted and everything, and it only had 21,000 kilometers on it. So from what I've heard through various municipalities with the tightening of their budgets, they're going to be turning their back on some of the fleet that they had ordered. So I'm hoping that we can get a hold of something really quickly. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be used on a daily basis, but when we have it, we need it. I would strongly urge as well that I think that it could be a key tool to have in our toolbox come snow removal. So I am of the adage that it should have a salter, it should have a blade on it if possible, because I think that if we have been very fortunate the last few years in regards to our snow removal, and even during those 2 years we had to borrow equipment from other municipalities because we had some mechanical issues. They happened. It'd be nice to have something sitting at the yard that we could dust off and warm up and get out there if we needed to. I also think that I've been here when there's been so much snow that the 550s had a tough time even moving the snow at the end of some of the cul-de-sacs because there was so much of it. So I would strongly recommend that we look for something that has those certain, be able to salt the whole thing and sand it. It could mean that it could go through the village much more expeditiously than the 550s. But I think it's something that we need to look at, and I think where I stand on it is that it may not come up for a month, it may not come up for 2 months, but if we have the money and we're ready to pull the trigger, as Lance says, when needed, and there's an opportunity there, I think I certainly will be supportive. So I'm going to go to Councillor Laidler and then Councillor Weber.
Have we looked at how much a new truck will cost and whether
Yes.
you can lease one?
Yes,
So
so
what's
not
the-
leased. I haven't looked at leased. So
Okay.
we're new truck, we're going to be looking at around $140,000. That's
Okay.
without salt and plow.
So a lease change it every 3 years would be paying monthly, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that I don't think we need it on a full-time basis at this point. You know, it's more something that wouldn't get a lot of mileage, but it's there when we needed it. So, Councillor Weberink.
There we go. Is a single axle big enough for what we want to use it for?
I believe it is, yes.
is,
So
okay.
it's got a 7.5 ton capacity, which our F550s right now only have a 2.5 ton capacity.
So
So,
you could get a load of salt and.
oh
bring it to
yeah,
the village.
exactly.
Okay.
It would definitely, I think, leave us better suited if we do run into situations where we need to run out and get material. It happened actually last year.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, with salt, and from my understanding, this year is going to be another, pretty decent winter.
Okay.
From what they're saying, so I think
And
it
then-
leaves us better suited for that.
Okay, and then to Mayor McEwen's point, I understand we would be using the two F550s until, you know, we replace the next truck with the snow plows. But to Mayor McEwen's point, if we could acquire the equipment for this large single axle truck, I guess we could just put that on the next new one if we decided to replace one of the 550s with a larger.
We could, but working with salt, it definitely takes its toll.
Yeah, it
so
only lasts
I
so long.
would advise probably against that.
Okay.
But it could be an option.
Okay.
And maybe I could just add, sorry.
Let me just finish, Kim.
I was thinking about the trustees and what happened there with the assistance of Metro. And I'm wondering, to your point, Mayor McEwen, I wonder if we couldn't hook up with an equivalent buying group like the ones for fire trucks within Metro and see if we can get on that list and have a list fed to us.
Absolutely, they have a whole procurement, and then, but it
Yeah.
was interesting, remember with the fire truck, it had to go through the auction process.
Yes.
For us to get it, so it'd be interesting.
That's
and
okay.
Yeah, and I could definitely engage with Metro Vancouver to see, because we were fortunate enough to be able to actually, we knew what a real gem was coming because Chief
Right.
Sharp had done so much research previously.
Right, and that's what I'm wondering, if other municipalities that have timed out, that maybe small municipalities like ours, somewhere up the coast maybe, that aren't putting on a lot of K and so
Yeah.
on, there might be something coming up and we repaint it and put our logo on it.
I think we could actually get them to paint it and put our logo on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Councillor Crack.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. Quick question, and you maybe don't have this answer right now, but how much do we typically spend in a year contracting out for the services that we would use this for?
I think Lance may have a better idea, but I may be putting him on the spot by asking him a
Yeah, I
question.
would have to get you those numbers,
Totally
but that's
understand.
totally fine. We can get
Just
those
curious
numbers
to
right.
see where we're at with
Yeah.
that. Thanks.
This year a bit more actually, just because of the trails that we've
Yeah.
been resurfacing and some of the
I
of the other work that we've been doing.
And I definitely see the value in it and, share the enthusiasm and the appreciation for having it on fleet, especially for the future, so
Good.
thanks.
Ms. Halliwell, you had some comment.
I just wanted to get some clarification, as we hadn't considered the addition of the snowplow and the salter on this dump truck within the $80,000 budget, and I just wanted to get some clarification from Mr. Fortier as to whether or not we feel that we could get an adequate piece of equipment for that recommended budget, including the the salter and the plow as well.
I would have to look into it a little bit further, but the reason why I put it at 80 is because there's not a lot out there. Even me researching for through Ritchie Brothers in British Columbia, there was only 2 single axle dump trucks. So you don't see typically a lot of these used things, and they seem to get snapped up fairly quick. So if we kind of have our sights set at a little bit higher, if something does come up, we're ready to pounce on that and get that truck.
Well, we could easily convene a quick council meeting,
Okay.
if there is something, and just to get it secured. And I will reach out to Metro Vancouver and talk to their procurement department. I've got a good rapport with them, and see what they have as well, and any advice in that. They also usually run them through their shop before they come out as well,
Right.
which would be very handy as well. So, good. So we have a recommendation to move forward on this with some flexibility in regards if something does come up, we'll have a quicker meeting to be able to approve the expenditure. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and we'll have to keep a sharp eye on things, and I'll make an inquiry into Metro Vancouver. Okay, we're now on to Anmore Community Hub Next Steps, 11B, report dated August 19th, 2020 from our Chief Administrative Officer is attached. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you. So this is further to the discussion at our last regular council meeting in July, on July 21st, where we had the representatives from Johnson Davidson Architecture come out and present the findings from the public consultation that had been basically taken place between the months of June and into early July. We had a number of open houses, both in person and virtually, as well as a survey that was available for about a month's time. And so that report has already been provided to the public and discussed, but is attached here again for reference. So through that, there was some more, I guess, digestion of what had been provided as feedback from the residents and what had been heard. And as a result, there's a number of proposed changes to the design of the Anmore Community Hub that are being included in this report. And so I'll just run through them really quickly, and then there's a recommended option, and certainly I can open it to the floor for council to discuss. What's also included in this report is a budget for the community hub. We're at a place now where I think we're moving through the process of design. We've gotten some feedback, and with these proposed changes, we've put a budget to that based on our architects' cost consultants and what they feel is reasonable on a per square foot basis. So I'll start with the changes. So there was talk of having inclusion of a commercial kitchen, or at least a rough-in for a commercial kitchen adjacent to the community hall. So that would be on the upper level. The other feedback was some allowance for an additional servery space downstairs next to the servery that would be used for our events. And this could accommodate future use either by the village or perhaps even a third party. Further, to wrap the community hall at the front, so the very south of the building, with a veranda, which would provide some additional outdoor space for the community hall, and as well it would provide for some additional coverage from the elements for the servery or serveries below. And finally, to fully extend the basement to the north, but not to daylight that space, as the feeling is it would be primarily used for storage and archiving. And the reason that we've included that was there seemed to be a general understanding that it's more cost effective to do something like that now, and that it would be better to capitalize on the construction and moving that forward. So one of the significant concerns that had been raised through some of the survey was some lack of clarity around the budget. We had typically been working with an average of $8 million because we thought that the building right at the very outset, at the early stages of the detailed design, would run anywhere between 6 and 10 million. So based on where we're at today, we're looking at a budget of a required budget of just under 7 million, so 6.8 million to do all of what has already been proposed and presented to the public, but also to include these additional spaces as well. So the extension of the basement and the additional veranda and et cetera. And then we're also recommending that we include a contingency because we are still in the early design stages of this building. And so a 15% contingency has been recommended by the architects in terms of being an adequate amount of sort of conservative contingency to include. That number will come down as we move forward with the detailed design phase in terms of what contingency might be required once we get the structural, mechanical, and electrical consultants all sort of getting in and doing their work. So I've got a recommendation here, a bit of a lengthy one. The last thing before I read the recommendation is just to touch on the fact that there is a current grant program available that this project would fit the criteria for. And I've already engaged a grant writer who's poised to get the application put together for us. The application period is, the deadline is the end of October. Now, what we have found out is that it will likely take up to a year for that grant program to be awarded, and that you cannot have awarded the contract for the work until the grant funding has been basically announced. So that could delay our timelines. However, I believe that there may be some conversations with some of our local elected officials which may assist us in that endeavor. I think it's still absolutely worthwhile to go through the process and to apply for that funding. So that's part of the recommendation, as well as to continue with the engagement of the grant writer to put that application together for us. So the recommended option is that council approve the current detailed design of the Anmore Community Hub project with changes, including a rough-in for a commercial kitchen adjacent to the community hall, a veranda to wrap around the community hall to the south, a second servery space for future use, and finish the basement, not daylighted, to the north. and that the budget for the Anmore Community Hub project be set at $8 million, which includes a 15% contingency, and that as the detailed design process is refined, that staff report back on appropriate changes to the contingency amount allocated as part of the project budget, and that staff be directed to apply to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture, and Recreation Infrastructure with the intent to secure federal and provincial funding towards the Anmore Community Hub project.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Wivering.
Okay. It was great having those open houses. I learned a lot, and it was great reading the survey. And of course, I think we were about right when we sort of imagined this village hall. I think there's an appetite for it. Some against, lots for, and lots of ideas of what people would like out of this. And of course, everybody's concerned about costs. Everybody wants it all for not a lot of money, and of course we can't have it both ways. But I don't know if I'm comfortable with the $8 million, and I don't know if we need to set the budget that high. I think the commercial kitchen is going to be a big thing. I think roughing it in is probably affordable. I think building a commercial kitchen with range hoods and mechanical systems and fire suppression systems, that could be anywhere, depending on the size, from $150,000 to $400,000. They're big money. It's a lot of stainless steel, a bit of complexity. But like I said, I can't imagine the size that we would need for. I can't even get my head around that. How big that commercial kitchen would be. But I would agree that we should rough it in and create the space. I'm concerned about the size of the basement. I know it would just be unfinished for storage and it's not expensive, but you know, I mean, we're moving into the age of digital storage. We're not going to need a whole lot of archives and stuff like that. Really, the existing archives that we have need a space and some future expansion and, you know, an area to store community event stuff and things like that. So 17,000 square feet, I know that a lot of that is unfinished, but I wonder how necessary it is, and if that could maybe bring our budget down a little bit. I agree with the veranda. I think that's a good idea. The whole idea is this is supposed to be a community hub, and we know it rains a lot here, so. And I think the extra servery in the basement, I think that we heard that loud and clear that people are going to want that space. Yeah, it's just the cost. I just, you know, I've seen these jobs go sideways. I mean, I work in the business. You know, if they do a cost accounting of, it's going to be about $7 to $7.5 million, and then there's a contingency, I could just see it going over that. You get into things you don't expect, like the septic system, and once you start digging, you may find things. And also, I mean, I know the roadworks is not included in this, and we don't have to do that at this time, but we do need to do this intersection and move Murray Lane. Is that going to be included in this, or is that an extra cost again?
That hasn't been included in this budget, but it wouldn't be a requirement for the building at this time.
Do we know roughly just what that piece would cost? Do we have any idea?
I don't have that specific piece broken out at this time.
Okay, because that would affect I mean, and I 100% agree we do have to apply for grant funding, and there's a bit of risk there. It's a shame that they make you wait a year. I did read about that, and I think it could take up to a year. It may get granted sooner. It's a lot of risk. I mean, I'm willing to take this on. This project is very controversial, but I think it's worthwhile, and I really want this. I think we need this. I think it's Anmore is long overdue for something like this. But I just don't know if I can get my head around the $8 million without knowing what some of the other things are going to cost and some of the unknowns. So that's my only comment.
Councillor Ledler.
I'm fully in support of the recommendation. I think if we just roughed in a commercial kitchen and not made it a full commercial kitchen, it's going to give us problems in the future for renting the property out. There's a lot of functions already, weddings and other functions that are trying to book places now, and they're almost a year in advance. If we put in a kitchen here, we certainly would be in a really good position for renting the property out for events for people in Anmore particularly, as opposed to having to go to other municipalities and rent out spaces there. The $8 million, yes, is a lot of money, but we are going to borrow some of it. And at the moment, interest rates are at the lowest they possibly could be.
We haven't established that, just to be clear about
We haven't?
borrowing. We have
Okay.
not, no.
If we did borrow some
Okay.
of the money, interest rates are at the lowest they are at the moment, and it might be a worthwhile consideration to borrow as much as we could on the lower interest rates, because we can get a bigger bang for our buck if we did that, and we can put it over a longer time period.
Good, thank you. Councillor Cryer.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I agree with both Councillor Weberink and Councillor Laidler in that, in general, I agree with all of the recommendations. The rough-in, I think just do it all right now. Again, I would hate to set us up for problems a year or two after we build it when it is time. And as far as the unfinished basement, I don't know enough about the cost difference. It does seem logical that you just do it all at the beginning, and then, I don't know what the difference in cost would be if we, did less than more. I don't know anything about that, quite honestly, but it seems to make the most sense just to get it done immediately. So we're prepared for the future, because we don't know what may happen. That's it.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, so I agree with the motion, and I do think that there is a lot more utility and use to the space if we're able to do the kitchen up front. However, managing cost is critical, and being judicious about how we expend village capital. But the contingency seems a bit generous, to be honest with you, and I don't want to be in a position, as Council Weberink said, I've been involved with a lot of projects that do tend to expand. The surprises are never good ones that I've ever experienced. However, when we start refining the costing and we start defining specifically the designs and parameters and finishes and all of that stuff, that's going to tie in the cost. I would be supportive of Councillor Laidler and Cryer if we were to be able to fund the build out of the commercial kitchen by savings that we captured from refining the contingency. So, I'd have to think about it, whether I could get on side with expanding the budget. I think $8 million is a generous and a good sized budget. I'd like to see cost containment measures within the process, trying to bring that down rather than arbitrarily reducing the budget. And potentially, one of my fears is because I've been on projects like this before, where we've saved cost, and in the end we've produced a product that's less than what we really needed, and the cost of fixing that later is enormous compared to doing it now. So, for example, the 3,290 square feet unfinished, when you have an open hole and an excavation and you're forming and pouring concrete, that's the cheapest it'll ever be. So, and for potential expansion, that's the cheapest expansion we'll ever have. I mean, we contemplated if there was a future expansion in 10, 20 years, whenever it was, maybe going sideways on the residual property that's still left and so on. That'll be infinitely more expensive than just fitting out something that's already there. So I'm on side with the motion and all these suggestions from the community. I'd really like to thank the residents for thinking so carefully about it and making these suggestions. But I think it's a good budget. I think we need to be prudent about cost containment and management.
Okay, sure.
Apologies, just one other thing, and I'm not sure this is the time to mention it, but I also think, as far as the event space goes, put in that second air wall to accommodate smaller to make the smaller room even smaller. It's going to give us a lot more opportunity to, more revenue at one time, and also take in smaller groups that may just, I don't know if this is the time to do that. But
I have a few comments.
I
too.
just wanted to
Okay.
jump in because there had been a question posed earlier today by Councillor Wevering that I posed to the architects, and I just have a response.
Perfect.
So I just wanted to share
Perfect.
that.
Yeah,
It
please.
literally just came
Yeah.
through in my inbox. So the question that Councillor Wevering had asked had to do with how much of the footprint of the building is going to be on native soil versus fill. And the response, and you'll have to forgive them for not being exact, they're rough numbers given the quick turnaround, but he's saying that approximately 16% of the new building is on fill. So the rest of it is on native soil.
Most of it is on native soil.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because it's a fairly large building footprint-wise. Okay.
Okay, I'm just. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, I think it's important that a lot of people realize that something has to be done sooner than later. We're currently spending $3,000 a month to rent just these three modules right here that we're sitting in. That equates to a little over $1 million mortgage on a monthly basis. That's number one. Second thing is that the trailers, when we bought them, have a lifespan, and we've already been in them for 7 years. Yeah, so they're maybe got another 3 to 4 years left on them before we'll have to replace them. And I remember the cost at the time was about $250,000. The building that we're proposing is a post-disaster. So that's a key component to this whole aspect. And the fact of the matter is that JD8 right now is in the process of building a post-disaster fire hall in Pitt Meadows. So the numbers that they're bringing forward are numbers that they're very accustomed to, and they're very real numbers. I have been part of this council for 14 years, and two previous proposals have come forward. This is actually, this proposal is actually a combination of both of them. The first one was a community center / daycare, which we've circulated the plans for, which was about 5,000 square feet.
6,000.
Or was it 6,000 square feet? Didn't include any of the village hall operations, and that was at the time back in 2005 was 2006 was estimated at $2.5 million, and because the council at the time didn't have the financing in place, it failed. Then back, I was part of with Mayor Anderson, who was there, who was wanting to build a village hall as soon as the old Maude Murray House was decommissioned. That again, who was it that did the proposal on that, a needs assessment, and that came in at about 8,000 square feet, 9,000. That was so, and the initial budget on that was about $7 million as well. So I think that this council has done an admirable job of saving up the funds. I heard very loud and clear from some residents that, you know, why are we paying for something now that people in the future will be able to benefit? We can easily fix that through doing some sort of a debt financing and stuff like that, and keeping our reserves well intact. The basement, again, as anybody knows, it's the cheapest space. You never have too much storage. I thought when we moved in here, we'd have too much storage, and I can tell you all three of those rooms are at capacity, and that slows staff down to be able to access records. I don't understand fully the 60, or what did he quote, 18% was going to be on fill. It doesn't make any sense to me, because the previous building, which had a 3,000 square foot footprint, had a full basement in it, and that's where we walked in from Maude Lane to the washrooms, to storage, to mechanical. So I
Parking lot is filled.
yeah, the whole parking lot out there is fill. So I don't understand that. But anyway, I also believe that we are well due for other level of government funding opportunities, and I have been bending the ear of our federal MP, as well as our provincial, and even developing some relationships with even members in caucus. So I'm hoping, and I'm telling them our story about how we got out of the hole that we were in ourselves, and now we're looking for some cooperation. We've done a spreadsheet. This village has received in the last 10 years very minimal funding, I think to the tune of about $270,000 to $300,000 compared to, I'll give you, for example, Belcarre, that was under Mayor Drew, was lucky to be able to lobby to get $6 to $8 million for their water system. So we are due, and the people that I talk to are very cognizant of that and well aware of it, and they said, look, just get us a proposal. Give us something. And especially during these COVID times, I believe that they're going to be hungry, and knowing that we have the money in the bank, we're not going to have to finance it. We're ready to go, and they're going to want to get jobs and get this economy back going. This recent state of emergency has really undermined the lack of assets that we have in this village in regards to a pandemic. I heard very loud from people talking about what happened if we were having to do meals here and stuff. We had nothing for that. What if we were having to sequester people? We didn't have anything that we do need something. This village is deserving of it. I think it's going to offer an amazing opportunity for all residents throughout the community to get different activities going from our seniors, which to our kids, and that it's going to be a real place, and that's why the village hub is really what it's going to be coming into. So I'm going to be supporting the recommendation as it stands, knowing that there will be some tweaking along the way, and I would really like it if we could really determine that basement, because I do have some concerns over that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The other thing also that we are greatly forgetting about, and again, we don't want to shock people, we've had a tremendous amount of people that want to get involved in this project through our community. We've got BC Wood wanting to be involved in this and donating product. We have glaziers wanting to, a fellow here who owns one of the largest glazing company wants to get involved in this. We have people in this community that want to make sure that this is done right and done in a very effective, efficient, economic way, and I will tell you that we haven't even incorporated those in those things. So I'm really confident that this number of $8 million is an absolute worst case scenario, and I think we're going to be coming in well under, and as well I think there's going to be various levels of government that are going to be participating, and this village is going to have an amazing facility for many, many years to come. So any other comments? Councillor
Yeah, just
Fleury?
one little correction. I don't believe it is a post-disaster facility, but it is a facility that will survive a disaster.
No,
The architects clarified that a post-disaster facility is like a e-com center. It's just in
Or a
terminology.
hospital.
Or a
So
hospital.
it's
Is
not
it?
quite
Oh,
to that
okay, okay.
level.
It
Yeah.
will survive
Yeah, okay,
disasters,
okay.
just for item of clarity.
Okay.
My concern about the basement is you mentioned that it would be a good place to expand into, but I don't know how much we're going to want to expand, 20 years from now, put offices down in a basement with no windows. And I gave this some thought, like if we are going to go through with this larger basement, should we not make rough it in for windows, like put headers in and it can still be concrete or something like that? I'm not sure how that would look. I can't visualize that. I'm trying to actually just, yes, Councillor Trowbridge.
I can shed some light because I was on the committee.
Oh, okay.
The concept is to put the headers and the forms in the poured form,
Okay.
but fill the whole thing. It's concrete. It's not daylighted. It's below grade. All of that is there, but it's on the drawings. The slab work would be done, so conduits laid, all that sort of stuff, but all of it moot, none of it with live piping or anything in it. And then if it needed to be habitable space like office expansion, then that would be simple knockouts already pre-framed, and you knock the concrete out and go from there.
Okay.
So that was costed into their structure for the footings and the forming.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's actually good to hear. That gets me a little bit more comfortable with that.
Honestly,
basement.
I should have given a briefing after the committee meeting, but frankly, I forgot about it.
Okay, and I guess I'm having trouble without knowing. Like Councillor Laidler made a good point about the commercial kitchen. It may make the space usable. There may be a business case there that it almost pays for itself, but without those numbers, it's hard for me to get my head around that. It's hard for me to get my head around what the. I really think it should be a roundabout out there. if we haven't got that priced out yet, I just don't want to see this project go off the rails. I think if a $6.8 million budget, if we could build everything we want for $6.8 million, I'd support it 100%. And that's not even taking into consideration, possible government grants. It's just, I like to deal in absolutes. And I know we can't, we have to have a contingency. Yeah, thank you. But I just don't want to see this project go off the rails. The $8 million, I'm just not quite comfortable because I'm afraid of what some of the unknowns could bring it way above that. That's my only concern.
Any other comments? Okay, we got a resolution. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Webling is opposed. Motion passes. Okay, we'll now move on to items of the Committee of the Whole. We have none. Mayor's report. Just had a few things I wanted to bring up to speed. We're doing Thursday evenings, we're doing bylaw enforcement of the garbage cans for bears. I think it's been working really well. I've seen them out cruising around. I'm hoping the compliance seems to be people are getting the message that even recycling of dirty cardboard isn't acceptable to be out the night before and that. So I think it's been a great building activity is certainly ramping up. I'm getting calls from people looking at pieces of property or emails saying, is there anything you could tell me about this? Anmore is certainly on the map and people want to move here. And I think the building department is going to get very, very busy here right now. It's with incredible sadness that a friend of mine that lives on Hemlock saw his own dog get taken away by a cougar. I know conservation was called on it, and we're active. We've put some signs up. Thank you for Public Works. A tragic event, and apparently it was a fairly large cat. Hopefully they can catch it, and hopefully nobody gets hurt. So just a real tragic story. Lake traffic and parking. I tell you, being out there with Mr. Gregg at 7 o'clock on a Saturday and Sunday morning, helping direct traffic, we learned a lot. And I tell you, getting the traffic control people, the bylaw people here, it's been a really, really great job in regards to handling the volumes of cars. I think, I talked to Ms. Halliwell, I think this weekend will be the end of it, although it's supposed to be quite warm in that, but we've educated as much as we can. We even now have lines drawn up on the parking lot here. I'm looking forward to having a debrief with Hydro. I think all of council in the coming months, just to what we learned, what we can do better for next year. And then on my last subject is about the Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department. There's been some challenging times as of late with the Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department. We've realized about a couple of years ago that our fire halls were in some need of to be replaced at some point. They don't meet today's structural standards. They don't meet the cinder block wall in the Anmore one would literally fall down. The one in Belcarra is part of the cliff is coming into it. It's got some leaking problems. So as the fire department, we really struggled with this. We've never really put funding aside for the halls because there was always kind of a bit of not a clear idea of who would pay for it. And so now Metro Vancouver, which operates the Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department, which encompasses both Anmore and Belcarra, has clearly laid it out in regards from a legal situation that both communities, it's a 50-50 split. And that includes also all rolling stock, all equipment, and the premise is that Belcarra would need the same machinery as Anmore. I have to tell you that I am very, very proud of the relationship that we've had Anmore and Belcarra in regards to going and to operating the fire department. It's sad some of the comings and goings that are going on right now. I was witness to a thing where the mayor from Belcarra was actually making insinuations that Anmore was covering up something, and Metro Vancouver was covering up. These are completely false. The fire trustees are the most open. We have a group of volunteers who I greatly respect. They take care of both of our communities. We have a chief that does an amazing job who is in essence a volunteer. anyway, I just wanted to, a real positive tone that the fire trustees did at our last meeting is that we started to put some funding away for the replacement of both of the fire halls. And I thought it was a real positive step, something that I kind of have put forward now that we know that the funding model is in place. I think it's going to be, it's interesting. There seems to be a little bit of from Belcara, a little bit of a, well, we're not as big as you type thing. Just so people are aware, Anmore pays about 75% of the operating costs because of our population and because in theory that would reflect as the amount of calls. But I just, I can't say enough good things about the fire department at this point, and I know that we're going to get through this. I think that we need to get some capital behind us so that we can replace these halls, so that we can ensure that all our volunteers are well served, they're well protected when they go in and protect us, and for many, many years to come. So. Please keep updated on we have Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department minutes that are usually attached to our agendas, so please keep updated with everything, and that's about it. So I'll move it on now to the councillor's report. Councillor Weber.
Yep. Yeah, kudos to the parking enforcement. I noticed Mayor McEwen was out on an early August weekend, very early in the morning, and you were out there, the majority didn't. Oh, sorry. Apologies to YouTubers. I just wanted to sort of mention that I thought the parking enforcement this year was much better, and kudos to our mayor for being out there early one morning on I think it was a Saturday. And I went around the next weekend and Sunday, and I know everything past the fire hall down Sunnyside and all the side roads was clear. It was amazing. So that's obviously something's worked there. Also want to, not a lot going on in the summer, I enjoyed the time off. I did want to give a shout out to a local resident, Lisa Webster Johnson, in the midst of COVID, took on the initiative to collect food for Anmore for Share's Food Drive. She ended up with about almost 750 pounds of food. I had to help her drive it out on Saturday. We filled 2 trucks. We were the first ones there, and they were, oh wow. Thank you. So it was good. It was just, there's been a lot of negativity in COVID. It has not been, 2020 has not been a great year. So it was really good to do something positive, and I was really happy to support it. And that's about all I have.
I echo Councillor Weberink, and thank you to the staff for both navigating all of the parking woes as well as the bears and the cougars. I think it's improved as the summer's gone on, and hopefully this last weekend will be good. Thanks to also Mayor McEwen for getting out there. I think that really helped a lot. And exactly, it's been quiet. I had one event, which I was shocked, a golf tournament, the Chamber of Commerce. I golfed in their golf tournament, which was well done and very safe, and it may be the new way to do golf tournaments now. It was kind of nice. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I too wanted to reiterate and a big thank you to Mr. Gregg as well as Mr. Fortier and both of their teams as they became sort of over the summer. We lost our bylaw officer in the height of our summer period and scrambled to find support for weekend coverage, and our public works staff didn't hesitate to step up and work some extra shifts doing bylaw enforcement, which is not what they're hired to do here for the village, but wanted to help out, so that was amazing. We were able to hire on a couple of additional part-time bylaw officers at the recommendation of Mr. Gregg, and he was out there orientating everybody on ticketing and procedures and worked a lot of weekends over the summer. So a big thank you to both of you as well as the staff. Also on the Barraware, I have had a preliminary report from the bylaw officer that was out on Thursday. She's actually going to do a round this Saturday morning at 6 a.m. to just check those Friday night bins are being put away, and I'll be reporting back with some of the numbers at the September 15th regular council meeting, but all in all it looks like it was very effective, so that's great. And we are still planning on doing the BC Conservation sort of information session. I spoke with them back in August, and they're just trying to get their resources together to do a bit of an information session. I've been in touch with members of the Environment Committee who have some specific questions they'd like addressed through that as well, so I'll be working with them. So just waiting for them on the timing of that, and then we'll get the information out. And finally, we've got a pretty significant capital works program this year, which got started last week. And we've got a dedicated web page on our website as well. We'll be providing updates on the construction schedule and where the crews are going to be sort of for the next 8 to 10 weeks, which is how long we anticipate all the work to take. So that information is being shared with the residents through all our normal channels and is available all the time on the website as well. That's it.